Let's talk about constructing bar graphs. A bar graph is constructed by labeling each category of the data on either the horizontal or the vertical axis, and the frequency or relative frequency of each category on the other axis. Then rectangles of equal width are drawn for each category, and the height of each rectangle represents the category's frequency or relative frequency. So let's use the data from the end of the part 1 video for this section that had the body parts and the frequencies to construct both a frequency and a relative frequency distribution. So you see across the horizontal axis, we call it the horizontal axis because it runs flat, we have, and really that line should be above those, sorry. There's our horizontal axis, and here's our vertical axis. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a bar. Each one of these combinations of letters stands for a body part. So we have back, hand, wrist, and I forget what they're all for, groin. Gee, wow. So if we go back up to the here, we see that the frequency of back was 12. So over the B bar, we're going to make a bar that goes up to 12 and comes back down. For hands, the frequency was 2, so our bar is going to go up to 2. And these should all be equal width, obviously width being across the bar. I'm doing the best I can, but you know, it's not perfect when you're freehanding. We had 2 wrists, so that should be about this exactly the same height as the hands. We had 1 groin. We had 1 elbow. 4 shoulders. 2 hips. 5 knees. And a neck, 1 neck. So that's about what our frequency bar graph should look like. Now, when we do the relative frequency bar graph, it should look very similar. So the bar for back should be the tallest, and groin, elbow, and neck should be the shortest. The only difference is instead of using the number of each one, we're using the relative frequency of each one. So if we go back up here and look, back has a relative frequency of 0.4. So we're going to go, and 0.4 is somewhere a little bit above 0.39. So our back bar should go a little bit above 0.39. And we continue the same way. So hand is 0.0667. So here's 0.06. 0.0667 is going to be a little bit above that. Same thing for the wrist because they had the same relative frequency. Groin is 0.033, so just a little bit above the 0.03. Elbow is the same. Shoulder, we have 0.1333, so that's a little bit bigger than 0.12. So I guess it should be about right here. Hip is the same height as hand and wrist, so about right there. Knee is 0.1667, so that's between 0.15 and 0.18, so maybe about right there. And neck is the same as groin and elbow. So you notice the bars are approximately, they look exactly the same, right? In terms of which ones are taller and which ones are shorter. It's just the numbers are different. So let's move on and talk about the Pareto chart. In bar graphs, the order of categories doesn't matter. However, bar graphs that have categories arranged in decreasing order of frequency help prioritize categories for decision-making purposes. And these decision-making purposes are usually in things like quality control, human resources, and marketing. So what exactly makes a Pareto chart different from a frequency or a relative frequency? Well, a Pareto chart is a bar graph whose bars are drawn in decreasing order of frequency or relative frequency. So an example of that over here, if we were to take one of our frequency bar graphs from the frequency bar graph from above, we would do it like this. It would be back first because it's the tallest. Then we would have the knee because it's the next tallest. Then the shoulder. And then hand, hip, and wrist are all the next tallest. So hand, wrist, hip. And since they're all the same height, it doesn't matter. And then we would have the groin, the elbow, and the neck last. And since they're all the same height, it doesn't matter what order they're in either. So you can see the Pareto chart goes in order of decreasing frequency or relative frequency. So frequency or relative frequency can go on the vertical axis. And I think we'll stop there for this video. We'll pick up with side-by-side bar graphs in the next video.